Okay, 3 tips to make you a better flipper, guaranteed. Because the 3 tips I'm going to tell you are not the typical type of tips that everybody wants to just spew out of their mouth and put right in front of you. It's not about, there's no one secret bait. There's no one secret anything with flipping. It has to do with matching the conditions to what the fish want at that time. And there's 3 things that most people don't consider when they're considering flipping. All right, I'm going to go through tell you all 3, and then I'll go through each one in detail. Number 1, fall rate. Completely overlooked when we're flipping and pitching. Fall rate is a big deal. I will explain why. Number 2 is bait action. Now, that's not to say there's not one catch-all action. We'll go over that in a second. And the 3rd one is bait size. Bait size is often very, very overlooked. And we'll get into that as well. But all right, so let's go back to number 1, fall rate. Fall rate is a big deal. I have seen times when the fall rate, you like multiply your number of bites in like go from 1 or 2 a day to like 20 to 30 bites a day by changing your fall rate. And I've seen it go both ways. I've seen it when you lighten it up to that fall rate is going slower. You're going to be using a little teeny small, 16th or 8th ounce weight versus using a big 1 ounce weight. I mean, the speed of that fall makes a big deal. There are times like post spawn when a little bit smaller weight sometimes can be a big trigger. I've seen that in the late summer when fishing gets really tough. You lighten up that sinker, go to a lot lighter, smaller sinker, get slower fall. All of a sudden, your catch rate is multiplied by 2 or 3 times. So pay close attention to your fall rate. And I'm not going to give you a bunch of different, in the cold weather or post front or this or that or the other. The deal with the big weights, you can see I've got a bunch of big weights right here in front of me. The deal with the big weights is speed, to get through the cover a lot of times. But there are a lot of times when you don't have to be going through cover to be using a heavier weight, like a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce weight. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous to use such a heavy weight, but I can tell you, my good buddy, Ish Monroe, over the years, he has converted me and turned me on to how that speed, he said speed makes him react. Sometimes the speed of the bait hitting the bottom, that weight hitting the bottom can be a trigger. But I think more times than not, it's the speed of that thing going down. It makes them, they react to it when it goes just flying down past their face versus just kind of like easily going down through there. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, that's more of what a little brim or a little bait fish or a crawfish does when it sees a bass. It thinks a bass is close by and it takes off, and then, that bass just reacts and bites it. I don't know what it is. The bass won't tell me anything, but I do know that fall rate is a big, big deal. It's something that you need to pay attention to as well, and you can become a better flipper. Okay, that's tip number 1, fall rate. Be conscious of it. You may want to try something for half a day, maybe a couple hours. If you're not getting bit, go heavier, go lighter, adjust your weight, and see if your bite rate does not increase. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, we're going to go to number 2. Number 2 is bait action. Now, right here is a missile crawl, and as you can see, there's no flappers, no appendages, no nothing. It is just a straight bait. And I designed this so that it would basically emulate a flipping tube. A flipping tube is amazing as far as getting flipping bites. And early on in my career, I loved a flipping tube, but I hated a flipping tube because they lost fish. That big, bulky deal. I messed with a zillion different hooks, and I got it to where it was pretty, I was pretty decent with it hook rate wise, but I designed this so I could put a straight shank hook in it, got a big hook slot in the belly. But anyway, I divulged. Okay, we'll get back to the straight. This action is very similar to the flipping tube in that when it goes down, that bait, it just kind of darts. When it goes down, it will. You can't make this thing. I don't care how you rig it. You cannot make it fall in a straight line. It's gonna dart. It's gonna do different things. It's just it's very, very unique in the way it falls, much like a flipping tube. That's one action. Here's another action where it's a craw father. You know, it's a craw bait with these little craws that flap real easy on the end. Then you got, you know, there's like a D-bomb. It's just a bigger, bulkier bait, and you know, some on a quick fall or a quick pull, these flappers will kind of wave real nice, almost like a paca craw, but not exactly like that. You know, a paca craw or a chigger craw, those have a different type of waving action in the water. And then you've got more of your traditional twin tail. This is a baby destroyer. It's got these twin tails that are opposing to each other, and in the water they undulate just like that. Those are different actions. There's times when this is the deal. 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 And they also, you know, that action also affects the fall rate. You put a ½ ounce weight on this and it's going to sink like a rock. You put a ½ ounce weight on this, it's going to sink like a rock, but not quite as fast. You put a ½ ounce weight on this, it sinks pretty fast, but not as fast as those other two. So the fall rate is affected by the type of action that the bait has. You know, and sometimes the less action a bait has, that can be really good in tougher conditions. And I brought this out just to show you. It's kind of a neat little deal. Back in 2010, when I won that Bassmaster Elite Series out on the California Delta, this was a Gambler BB cricket. You know, it's the old Allen fire craw for you old school flippers. All you old school flippers out there. It's really kind of the Allen craw. My buddy Terry Scroggins, he's got the molds back for that Allen craw. So if you like that Allen craw, he's gonna bring it back, bringing that thing back some. But that was what I was using the third and fourth days when I won that tournament, because I just needed a small bait with as little action as possible out there in the California Delta. The fishing had gotten really tough. It was the worst cold front of the whole year when we were out there, and I can tell you, if I had the missile craw, that is absolutely what I would have been flipping, because it's kind of the same deal. It's got that erratic fall with really no action, just very subtle. And I can tell you, there's a handful of pros that missile baits doesn't have anything to do with that throws this missile craw on a regular basis. So it's a little secret. I can't divulge names. That's not right. But I will tell you that action is a big deal. A lot of people, like a rage tail something or other, rage tail craw, whatever, that has a certain action. It's got a lot of thumping action. Sometimes that is a great trigger. Sometimes they do not want that. They want something straight. I mean, you might even have to flip a quiver or some kind of straight worm with almost no action. It's more slender. So that action is a big deal. The other one, the third one, number three, size. That is probably the most overlooked flipping factor that I can tell you about. Now, I just mentioned the story about the BB cricket and how I just needed the smallest bait, and you can see that the missile craw and the BB cricket aren't very much different size-wise. They're both in that small, tiny category. Then you got your D-bomb, which is much bigger and bulkier. You can see that. That is a bigger, bulkier bait. There are times, believe it or not, when that D-bomb will just outfish, or a bulky, let's just go with bulky bait. A bulky bait will outfish a slender bait with less action. That's just the way it is. Sometimes they want that bigger, bulkier creatures. Like they seek it and they find it and they want to go run and grab that big, obtrusive thing. And sometimes when that bite's going on, they want even bigger, like a big destroyer. Man, I've heard a number of people tell me that this bait right here has just absolutely killed them in Mexico when they're really going after those big bass, and guys are throwing all kind of other bigger creature baits, brush hogs and stuff like that. But this is just a little bigger than a brush hog, but you can see it's an even bigger profile than the D-bomb. So it's an even bigger size, and that bigger, bulkier size can be a big deal. But then sometimes they want the little smaller one. Here's the little baby destroyer. It's a much smaller, less obtrusive presentation and size. So that's the deal. Sometimes this is the deal. So use those three things when you factor into your flipping, and you will be a much better flipper.